Welcome back, Spinal Injury Warriors. It's me again. Thanks very much to those of you that have watched my previous videos. You'll be relieved to know this is just a short one. I need to bring you up to date with a couple of things. The first of which being my actual diagnosis and a bit of a shock. And secondly, we got married. I just want to say at this point, the reason why I'm making these videos and the reason why I started the channel is really kind of threefold. Firstly, it's to help me process what's happened to me over the course of the past couple of years or so. There's a lot of stuff that I need to make sense of, and in doing these videos, it's just helping me process what's actually happened. Secondly, it's to share my journey in the hope that it resonates with anybody that's going through or is about to go through a similar journey, and to potentially spark a discussion on any of the topics that I've covered or I'm going to cover in future videos. And thirdly, it's to foster a better understanding of spinal cord injuries in general and how unique they are to the person that's suffering from them. As I said in the description of my channel, a spinal cord injury is as unique to the individual as their own fingerprint is, and very often you won't know that somebody's suffering from a spinal cord injury because it's not always just about somebody being paralysed and in a wheelchair. There's a lot of different manifestations to a spinal cord injury. So, as ever, please do like and subscribe. It really does mean a lot to me. And also, please do feel free to add some comments, suggestions. I'm very much new to this whole YouTube and video making malarkey, and I really welcome all suggestions, good and bad. I'm my own biggest critic, so please comment below, like and subscribe. So after having had my own commissioned MRI scan and being told by a private neurosurgeon that I needed to get back within the NHS and within their neurosurgery department, we finally were able to get a referral to Leeds General Infirmary and got in front of one of the country's top neurosurgeons to get an actual diagnosis. Prior to this, I had a couple more scans, CT scan, MRI scan, and finally I got a referral. And during this referral, we got the shocking news that this was actually a really serious situation. My diagnosis was that I got a giant calcified disc between my thoracic vertebra 10 and 11. Now, this disc had at some point in my life had herniated, and because it had been out of its position for so long, it had actually started to turn to bone and harden, and in doing so was compressing my spinal cord. And by this time, in kind of June 2022, my spinal cord at this point was compressed by 80%. And this was affecting me in a number of different ways. Clearly, I was in a lot of pain. But as the surgeon said to me, there's no way he would operate on me if it was just for pain. Basically, it was slowly paralysing me, and I was already starting to get signs of that paralysis. My left leg was losing sensation. My left foot, as I've mentioned before, started to feel thick and it started to feel wet. I was tripping up in the surgery itself. I was asked to walk in a straight line with my eyes closed, and I just couldn't do it. I couldn't stand up still with my eyes closed without falling over. So I was already losing my balance, or as the surgeons would call, your proprioception, which is what your nerves are responsible for doing, keeping your position in space and time. So the surgeon told me that he can operate, but in 20 or 30 years of his career, he'd only actually done 20 of these operations because they are very rare. Discs at this position in your back are generally quite stable. The middle of your back, relatively speaking, compared to your cervical spine up here and your lumbar down at the bottom of your back, the central bit of your spine is relatively stable, and your discs don't normally herniate in this position. So that was quite rare by itself. But any operations on your disc and your spinal cord at this position is going to potentially impact your spinal cord at a point where it's at its thickest, and it's carrying all the messages from your brain all the way down your body to your lower half. So you impact the spinal cord at this point, and there's a very good chance that there's going to be some impact in the lower half of your body. And indeed, he was more explicit in what he told me, in that there's a 20% chance that the operation will paralyse me, which was a massive shock. His proposed approach for a surgery would be twofold. There'll be two surgeries. The first surgery would go through my back. It would be a posterior approach directly onto my spine, and this would be a laminectomy, a decompression, and a fusion across 3 vertebrae. Now, what that actually means is laminectomy is where you take a little bit out of the back of your spine to the rear of your spinal cord, and in doing so, it just opens up the channel in which your spinal cord passes through to allow it a little bit more space to move. So that's the laminectomy part of the operation. This in turn allows the decompression, so it relieves the pressure from the rear, from the disc that's pressing on it from the front, if you like. And then in order to give that more stability, he was suggesting that he would fuse 3 of my vertebrae above and below the point at which the disc was compressing my spinal cord, which would give the whole area more stability. And at that point, he would stop, let me recover, and then the following week he would come in and he would approach from the side and get the disc and perform what's called a discectomy, and that is cut the disc back, take the pressure off the spinal cord. Now, we were aware of the risk, the general risk of him touching my spinal cord and causing further injury, and there was a 20% chance that I was going to be paralysed in result of this. And the least I could expect was to have some form of weakness in my lower body. But what he did say was that the first operation, the laminectomy, the fusion, the decompression, the relatively common operations, particularly in your lumbar spine, and this was a lower risk operation than the second operation, where they would have to go through my spine, separate my ribs, deflate a lung, and get to the disc from the side in order to cut it back and relieve the pressure off the spinal cord. And that was the really dodgy operation. So we were given a choice, effectively. The surgeon was kind of hinting that this was a very rare operation, and any day he'd probably prefer to do lumbar or cervical spinal operations than anything impacting your thoracic spine, just because of the risks involved. But equally, he was giving us a choice. Look, I will do this operation, or you can live with this and see how you go. But given that news, I didn't really need any time, and we didn't really need any time to make the decision. I had this thing in my back which was slowly paralysing me. The chances are I could take a slip, trip, fall off my bike, anything, fall down the stairs, move awkwardly, and I could be paralysed, and it would happen without warning, and that would be it. So I'd already made the decision before we left that kind of half an hour meeting that I was going to consent to having the operation, but he gave us time to think about it, and he sent us away with this shocking news for us to just digest. Anyway, it was a no-brainer. I had to give it a go for the reasons that I mentioned before. I couldn't live with this thing inside me, knowing that it was a ticking time bomb, that at any moment in time I could be paralysed by it. And there was a 20% chance that this surgeon was going to paralyse me, but 80% was pretty good odds as far as I could see it, and I felt fit and healthy, never had any previous issues, so I was going to give it a go. 2 days later, after having made the decision, my wife, then my girlfriend, Fliss, came in and said, "I think we should get married." And I know why she asked at that moment, but we didn't really talk about it at the time, apart from the obvious reasons we'd been together for many years. But we kind of knew, and I knew, that we wanted to get married while I could still stand up. I love music, and I remember at the time I was listening to a lot of music, and it's amazing how music can get to you when you're at your most vulnerable. And there was one particular song by one particular artist that kept popping up on my Spotify playlist at the time. The band is called the New Pornographers, and the song is called Challenges. It's quite old now, actually. I think it's probably from 2004 or something like that. But there's a line in that song which really struck a note with me, and it kind of summed up where we were. And the line goes something along the lines of, "Be safe, you say, whatever the mess you're in, you're mine, okay?" And that kind of sums up what an amazing woman my wife to be is, and that she was prepared to take on whatever the mess I'm in. So we got married a few days later, just Fliss and I and Ted, our dog, along with my sister and brother-in-law and my lovely nephews as the only witnesses and the only people that knew we were going to get married. Oh, and a bagpiper who I'd found busking on the local high street, who came and piped us in at the local registry office. It was an amazing day. It was a beautiful, hot summer's day, July the 11th, 2022. And it was incredible. Hello. And what was really good fun at the end of it was WhatsApping our family group, Fliss's 2 grown-up girls, to tell them, and my mother-in-law to tell them that we'd gone and got hitched. So that's all for now. Thanks very much for watching. Keep tuned for further videos. I think next time we'll start talking about what happened to me in surgery. But for now, thanks again. Please do like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.